The glow of my phone lit up the kitchen counter. At first, I thought it was another photo of my niece or a silly meme from a coworker. But the words stopped me cold. Sometimes cutting out toxic people is the best thing you can do for yourself, my sister had written. Beneath it was a thread of comments, her friends, her colleagues, even cousins, nodding along, liking, agreeing. And then my name. She had tagged me. My coffee turned bitter in my mouth. My hands trembled, not from rage, but from something sharper. Shame. Betrayal. She hadn't just pushed me away. She had erased me in front of the entire world. My name is Rachel. I'm 32 years old, and for most of my life, I've been known as the reliable one. Not the loudest, not the brightest star, not the one who turned heads when she walked into a room, but the person people could lean on. At work, it meant I was the first one my boss called when a deadline slipped. At home, it meant babysitting my sister's kids so she could chase her dreams. At family gatherings, it meant helping mom in the kitchen while everyone else laughed in the living room. I wore dependable like a badge of honor. It wasn't glamorous, but it felt solid. Like proof that I mattered. That morning, before everything collapsed, my life looked ordinary. I woke up in my small but cozy apartment. The walls were painted soft gray, the kind of neutral shade you pick when you can't afford to repaint every few years. My bookshelves were crammed with half-finished novels, my coffee table stacked with sticky notes, reminders for errands, appointments, promises I'd made to other people. I brewed my coffee strong, poured it into a chipped mug I'd had since college, and checked my phone out of habit. That's when I saw it. My sister Emily's post. Emily has always been the golden one. Younger than me by 2 years, but light years ahead in confidence. She had the kind of laugh that made strangers turn their heads. She was beautiful in an effortless way, tousled hair, perfect eyeliner, a wardrobe that always looked expensive even when she claimed it was just from Target. I admired her. Sometimes I envied her. But more than anything, I defended her. When she dropped out of her first job after only 3 months, I was the one who told our parents not to worry. When she borrowed money she never repaid, I covered for her. When she started posting about cutting out toxic people a few months ago, I ignored the uneasy twist in my stomach. I told myself she meant old friends or maybe an ex. Not me. Never me. But that morning, the truth hit like a punch. She had written the word toxic and then, casually, as though it cost her nothing, she tagged me. The phone buzzed in my hand as the comments piled in. Some strangers liked it. Others chimed in with heart emojis or clapping hands. A few family members added their approval. I could feel the world tilting. My kitchen, once familiar, seemed to close in. The smell of coffee grew sour. The ticking of the clock above the sink turned sharp, like a countdown. For years, I had built my life around being the sister who showed up, the one who sacrificed. And in one post, Emily had rewritten me into something ugly. Something disposable. I wanted to call her, to scream, to demand an explanation. But my throat tightened, dry and useless. Instead, I stared at my reflection in the dark screen of my phone. My hair was messy, my eyes tired, my face pale. And a thought I'd never allowed myself crept in: maybe she never saw me as the reliable one. Maybe she only ever saw me as someone to use, and then discard when it suited her. Growing up, Emily and I shared a bedroom. 2 twin beds pushed against opposite walls, a strip of beige carpet between us. She taped glossy magazine cutouts of singers and models above her bed. I lined my side with library posters and sticky notes of favorite quotes. From the beginning, our differences were obvious. Emily wanted attention, I wanted quiet. She wanted center stage, I wanted a corner to observe. But if you'd asked me then, I would have said we were close. Sisters close. When she forgot her homework, I shared mine. When she fought with mom, I was the one who sneaked into her room afterward with cookies from the kitchen. When she went to prom and cried in the bathroom because her date disappeared, I held her hair back as she sobbed into the toilet. I thought love meant stepping in whenever she fell. But somewhere along the way, stepping in became expected. In college, she borrowed my car so often it barely felt like mine. I'd sit in my dorm room, listening to the buzz of my phone as she promised, "I'll fill the tank tomorrow, I swear." Tomorrow rarely came. After graduation, when I landed my first steady job, she showed up at my tiny apartment with tears in her eyes and unpaid bills in her hands. "Just until I get back on my feet," she said. I wrote the checks without hesitation. The pattern cemented itself. She stumbled, I caught her. She overspent, I covered it. She shined in front of others, I stood behind her, clapping the loudest. It wasn't that I didn't want her to succeed. I did. Maybe too much. But every year, the weight grew heavier. One memory still slices through me, even now. Thanksgiving, 5 years ago. Emily brought her new boyfriend home, the one who worked in marketing and wore expensive shoes. During dinner, he asked about our jobs. Emily grinned, flicked her hair, and said, "Rachel works hard, but she's not really ambitious, you know. She likes stability." The table laughed. Even my parents chuckled. And though my cheeks burned, I smiled. Because that was my role, to take the sting and make it easy for everyone else. But I never forgot it. Looking back, there were so many cracks I ignored. The way she never apologized, only justified. The way she posted curated glimpses of her life online but cropped me out, even if I was sitting right beside her. The way she once called me her backup plan when her babysitter canceled. And yet, I kept showing up. Because she was my sister. Because family was supposed to mean something. That's why the social media post felt like more than just an insult. It was a rewriting of history. Years of sacrifice erased with one word, toxic. I scrolled through the comments, heart hammering. One of her friends replied, "Good for you, Em. Protect your peace." Another chimed in, "Cutting out family is the bravest thing you can do." Family. That word hit like a blade. I thought of the countless times I defended her, covered for her, lifted her up. And now, she was holding me up to strangers like a warning sign. A cautionary tale. Toxic. The betrayal didn't come out of nowhere, I realized. It was just the loudest, most public expression of something that had been building for years. And maybe the cruelest part. She knew I wouldn't fight back. She knew I'd swallow it, just like I had swallowed everything else. For a moment, I almost believed her. I looked around my apartment, the unpaid bills still stacked from when I'd helped her, the toys I'd bought my niece scattered in a box by the couch, the sticky notes reminding me of promises I'd made to other people. What if I was toxic? What if being dependable had curdled into something pathetic, something bitter? But then another memory surfaced. A job interview I'd once helped Emily prepare for. She had called me at midnight, frantic, and I had stayed up with her for hours, rehearsing answers, tweaking her resume. The next day, she got the offer. She had texted me a single line, "Thanks, sis. You're the best." No mention to her friends. No credit given. Just me, in the background, as always. That's when the betrayal sharpened into clarity. It wasn't that I was toxic. It was that I was disposable. And Emily, for all her shine, had just made the mistake of forgetting one important detail: the world she was stepping into, the job she wanted, the industry she craved, was one where my voice carried weight, too. She thought I would stay silent forever. She was wrong. 2 days after the post, I sat at my desk at work, still raw from the humiliation. My phone buzzed again. This time, it wasn't another notification from Emily's comment section. It was my mom. "Rachel," she said, her voice high-pitched and excited. "Have you heard? Emily got the job. 100,000 a year. Can you believe it?" My chest tightened. I hadn't heard. "Of course not. She called us last night," Mom went on. "She's over the moon. They said she blew the interview out of the water." "Oh, honey, isn't it wonderful?" Wonderful. That was the word she used. The same mother who had stayed silent on Emily's post, who hadn't once asked me how I felt, was practically singing about my sister's success. I swallowed hard. "That's great, Mom." I ended the call as quickly as I could, but the damage was done. My hands trembled as I set the phone down. Emily had called me toxic to the entire world. And now, she was stepping into a six-figure job that would put her face on company websites, press releases, LinkedIn spotlights. Her narrative, her truth, would solidify. She'd be the golden sister, the one who escaped the weight of a toxic sibling to thrive. And I would stay in the shadows, the reliable one, the silent one. The fool. That night, I couldn't sleep. I tossed in bed, sheets twisted around me like restraints. My mind replayed her post, each comment like a sting. And then I thought of her job, of the title she would flaunt, of the way our parents would glow with pride. By 3 a.m., I was pacing my apartment, barefoot, the floorboards creaking under my weight. I whispered into the silence, "She can't get away with this." But even as I said it, guilt gnawed at me. Wasn't revenge petty? Wasn't I proving her point by even thinking it? And yet, I thought back to the late nights I'd spent helping her prepare for interviews. The contacts I'd introduced her to. The recommendation letters I'd drafted under the guise of editing. She hadn't climbed here alone. And now, as irony would have it, she had landed a job in the very industry where my voice mattered. Marketing. Communications. A company whose director I had worked with closely on a joint campaign just last year. A director who had once told me, "Rachel, if you ever need anything, call me. You've got integrity, and I respect that." Integrity. The word lingered. What would he think if he knew the truth? If he saw the post? If he realized the person they had just offered a $100,000 position to was someone who publicly dragged her own family for attention? I sat back down on the edge of my bed, the glow of my phone on the nightstand. My sister's smiling face stared back at me from her profile picture. Confident. Untouchable. My fingers itched. It would take one phone call. Less than 20 minutes. I thought of her laughter at Thanksgiving, the way she had brushed me off like background noise. I thought of the years of bills, favors, sacrifices that had gone unnoticed. I thought of her post, public, sharp, merciless. For once, the silence didn't feel like strength. It felt like surrender. And I was done surrendering. I picked up my phone. The phone sat heavy in my hand. I didn't dial. Not yet. Instead, I stared at the dark screen, my reflection faint in the glass. My face looked unfamiliar, drawn, restless, older somehow. My eyes were ringed with shadows, my lips pressed tight. Sleep had abandoned me days ago. Every time I closed my eyes, Emily's words replayed, flashing like neon, toxic, toxic, toxic. The comments bled into my dreams, voices chanting in approval. I tried distracting myself. I scrubbed the counters, rearranged the pantry, sorted through old mail. But no matter what I did, my mind circled back to her. To the betrayal. To the job she didn't deserve. By midnight, I gave up pretending. I sat at my kitchen table, a mug of tea cooling in my hands. Outside, the city was quiet, only the hum of distant traffic breaking the stillness. Maybe I am toxic, I whispered. The words felt poisonous on my tongue. I thought of all the years I'd spent cleaning up after her mistakes. The money I'd loaned, the nights I'd stayed awake helping her, the calls I'd answered no matter the hour. Was that enabling? Was I suffocating her without realizing it? But then another voice cut through, sharp and steady. No. You gave. She took. That isn't toxicity. That's exploitation. My chest tightened as memories surfaced, one after another. The time Emily called me at work, sobbing about an overdraft fee, and I slipped her my debit card so she wouldn't embarrass herself in front of her boyfriend. The time she left me waiting in a cafe for 3 hours, only to text that she'd forgot our plans. The way she always introduced me as her big sis who's like a second mom, as if my role was caretaker, not equal. Each memory added weight, pressing down until my lungs ached. And then, layered over it all, the image of her face when she landed this job. Smug. Victorious. The golden child ascending again, this time with my silence as the ladder. I pushed back from the table and began pacing the apartment. The floor groaned under my steps. My hands balled into fists, unclenched, balled again. Enough, I muttered. I stopped at my bookshelf, pulling out an old photo album. Inside, pictures told a story I barely recognized anymore. Us as children, me braiding her hair before school. Me holding her hand at the zoo. Me grinning with pride at her high school graduation while she posed, radiant, in the center. Always me behind her. Supporting. Holding. Carrying. My throat tightened, but I didn't cry. Not this time. Instead, I flipped the page with a sharp snap. In that moment, I understood, this wasn't about revenge for one cruel post. This was about reclaiming years of myself I had given away. The thought steadied me. I walked to the window. The city lights blinked back, distant and steady. A breeze rattled the glass, cool against my overheated skin. Somewhere in that same city, my sister was probably celebrating. Maybe she was at dinner with friends, laughing over cocktails, toasting her new salary. Maybe she was telling the story of how she cut me out, painting herself the hero for protecting her peace. The contrast burned. I turned back to the table, grabbed my phone, and scrolled to the director's contact. His name sat there, familiar, patient, as though waiting. My thumb hovered. Fear whispered, what if this makes you look bitter? What if it ruins you too? But another voice answered, clear and fierce, what if it sets you free? I pressed the screen, feeling the faint vibration as the call connected. For the first time in years, I wasn't background noise. I was the storm. The line rang twice before a warm, slightly rushed voice answered. This is Martin Reynolds. I froze. My throat felt dry, like sandpaper. For a second, I thought about hanging up, pretending this was a mistake. But then I heard Emily's laugh echo in my memory, sharp, triumphant, the sound of someone who thought she had already won. Mr. Reynolds, I said, my voice steadier than I expected. This is Rachel Carter. Emily's sister. There was a pause. I imagined him at his desk, maybe a cup of coffee cooling nearby, maybe a pile of resumes in front of him. Oh. Rachel. Yes, Emily mentioned you. His tone was cautious, polite. What can I do for you? I took a breath. I think you should know the truth about who you're hiring. The silence stretched. I could hear my heart pounding in my ears. Then his chair creaked, like he was leaning back. Go on. So I did. I told him about the lies, How Emily had stolen my research notes during grad school and passed them off as her own in a published article. How she had exaggerated her nonprofit volunteer work, taking credit for hours I'd logged instead. How she had left jobs abruptly, each time blaming others for her failures. I didn't shout. I didn't beg. I just laid the facts out, slow and deliberate, like setting pieces on a chessboard. At first, he was quiet. Then he asked questions, pointed, precise. Dates. Details. Could I provide documentation? Yes, I said. And I could. Old emails, time-stamped files, even my former professor's statement. By the time the call ended, my hands were trembling. Martin's voice had cooled, professional now. Thank you, Rachel. This is significant. I'll need to look into it immediately. I hung up and stared at my phone. Relief flooded me, but it was tangled with guilt. Was I really the kind of person who sabotaged her own sister? I pressed my palms against my eyes, breathing hard. But deep down, I knew this wasn't sabotage. This was the truth, finally unshackled. The next day was a blur of nerves. I checked my phone every few minutes, half dreading, half hoping for a call. At work, I moved through meetings like a ghost, my thoughts miles away. By evening, the message came. A voicemail. Rachel, this is Martin Reynolds. Thank you for your candor yesterday. After verifying certain details, we've decided to rescind Emily's offer. I thought you should know. I replayed it 3 times, the words sinking in deeper with each pass. Rescind. The dream job, gone. Just like that. For a brief, wild moment, I felt victorious. I imagined Emily's face when she got the news, shock spreading, pride crumbling. But the triumph didn't last. Because hours later, my phone buzzed with her name. Rachel. Her voice cracked, not with anger, but disbelief. They took it back. They said someone told them things about me. You didn't, you wouldn't. I closed my eyes. My pulse raced. I told the truth. The silence on the line was thick, suffocating. Then came her gasp. You ruined me. And she hung up. The days that followed were heavier than I expected. Emily exploded online. Posts dripped with venom, cryptic rants about betrayal, backstabbing, family snakes. Friends messaged me, asking what had happened. I ignored most of them, but the weight pressed down all the same. At night, doubt gnawed. Had I gone too far? Had I crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed? One evening, I bumped into our mother at the grocery store. She didn't know yet, Emily hadn't told her the whole story, but she noticed my drawn face. You look tired, sweetheart, she said, touching my arm. Is work too much? I wanted to spill everything, to lay the truth bare. But I bit it back. This wasn't about winning my mother's sympathy. This was about reclaiming myself, whether anyone applauded or not. Still, the loneliness was brutal. And then came the backlash. 2 of Emily's closest friends messaged me directly, their words sharp knives. How could you? She trusted you. You're jealous, admit it. You'll regret this when she cuts you out forever. Each message left me shaken. I wanted to defend myself, to explain that I hadn't lied, hadn't exaggerated. But something stopped me. Because defending myself to them would mean I still needed their approval. And I didn't. Not anymore. But there were setbacks, too. Martin called again, asking for one more clarification. Emily had apparently tried to counter with her own story, painting me as the bitter, unstable sister. For a moment, I panicked. What if he believed her? But he didn't. The documents I'd sent were too clear, the timeline too precise. She tried, he said dryly. But truth leaves less room for argument than stories do. Still, his words lingered after we hung up. Emily had tried to fight back, and she would again. That was who she was. One night, I sat alone on my balcony, the city stretched out below in a web of glowing lights. My hands shook as I lit a candle, more for comfort than anything. I thought about the years ahead. Would Emily forgive me someday? Would we speak again? Or had I burned this bridge down to its bones? Maybe both. Maybe neither. But one truth crystallized in the quiet: I hadn't acted out of spite. I had acted out of survival. Because if I had stayed silent, she would have climbed higher on my back, her lies built on the ruins of my work. And I was done being the foundation she crushed to rise. The confrontation came faster than I expected. It was Sunday afternoon, and I had just settled into the quiet rhythm of making tea when the pounding started at my door. Heavy, urgent. I froze, kettle hissing behind me. "Rachel. Open up." Her voice. For a split second, I thought about pretending I wasn't home. But my hands moved on their own, unlocking the deadbolt. Emily stood there, eyes wild, cheeks streaked with tears that had dried into faint salt lines. She shoved past me into the apartment, the sharp scent of her perfume filling the room. "You," she spat, spinning toward me. "You cost me everything." I closed the door slowly, steadying my breath. "I told the truth, Emily. That's all. The truth." She laughed, high and brittle. "You're pathetic. You've always been jealous, always waiting for me to stumble so you could finally feel important." Her words sliced, but something inside me had shifted too far to let them pierce. "No," I said softly. "I was always covering for you. Picking up the pieces you left behind. This time, I just refused to lie." Her jaw tightened. "Do you know what people are saying about me? Do you know how hard I worked for that job?" "I do," I said, holding her gaze. "But you build your story on lies. And lies don't last." For a moment, she faltered. Her chest rose and fell, sharp and uneven. Then her eyes darted around my apartment, like she was searching for a weak spot to strike. "You think this makes you strong?" she hissed. "Exposing me. You think anyone will side with you once they know you destroyed your own sister?" Her voice cracked on the word sister. And that was when I realized, she still believed family was a shield she could wield, even after everything. I stepped closer, my hands steady at my sides. "What I did was painful, yes. But I didn't destroy you. You destroyed yourself, one lie at a time. I just stopped protecting you from the consequences." The room was quiet except for the low hum of the kettle still on the stove. Emily's face crumpled, not into sorrow, but into rage. She grabbed her phone from her pocket, thumbs flying over the screen. "Fine. Let's see how you like it when everyone knows what you've done." The words tumbled out of her in a furious stream. A new post went live within seconds, screens glowing, accusations hurled, a performance for anyone willing to watch. But this time, something was different. Because I didn't flinch. I didn't reach for my own phone. I just let her words hang in the air, desperate and hollow. "You can post whatever you want," I said, turning off the stove and setting the kettle aside. "But deep down, you know why they took that job away. And so do I." Her eyes burned into me, searching for guilt, for hesitation. She found none. For the first time, the silence belonged to me. She stood there for a long, breathless moment, then finally let out a sound halfway between a growl and a sob. Without another word, she stormed out, the door slamming so hard the frame rattled. I stood alone in the aftermath, the faint echo of her footsteps fading down the hall. It was over. Not the pain, not the history, but the illusion that had kept me chained. For years, I had been the quiet sister, the fixer, the one who swallowed truths for the sake of peace. But in that small apartment, with the smell of burnt tea leaves in the air, I finally claimed my voice. And though Emily's anger still hung heavy in the room, it couldn't drown out the one thing that remained, steady and unshaken, the truth. The apartment felt different after she left. Not cleaner, not brighter, just lighter. Like someone had opened a window in a room I didn't realize was suffocating me. The kettle still sat on the stove, cold now, its whistle long gone. For a while, I didn't move. I just stood there, watching the thin curl of steam fade into nothing. When I finally sat down, my body sagged against the couch cushions, every muscle unwinding as if I'd been holding myself upright for years. The quiet was sharp at first, almost jarring. Then it softened, seeping into my bones like warm sunlight. I had expected guilt to flood me. I had expected to shake with regret or panic about what would happen next. But instead, there was only clarity. For once, I wasn't rehearsing explanations in my head. I wasn't spinning excuses for family, or imagining how to cushion Emily's fall. For once, the silence was mine. Over the next week, life settled into a strange rhythm. Emily's posts came fast and furious, long rants, dramatic claims, veiled threats. Friends tagged me, sent screenshots, asked if I wanted to respond. I didn't. Not because her words didn't sting, they did, but because I finally understood something. Her version of me had always been a performance for her audience. And I didn't have to participate anymore. At work, my coworkers noticed the change. "You look lighter," one of them said, tilting her head. I smiled, a real smile this time, and realized she was right. I had space in my mind again. Space to think, to plan, to dream. One evening, I drove out to the lake outside town. It was a place I hadn't visited in years, not since high school, when Emily and I used to sneak away there on summer nights, lying on the dock and pointing out constellations we didn't really know. Now the water stretched out in a sheet of silver under the moonlight, still and endless. I sat on the edge of the dock, my shoes dangling just above the water. For the first time in months, I breathed deeply, my chest expanding without resistance. The night smelled of pine and damp earth. Crickets hummed in the dark. I thought about everything that had happened, about Emily's face when she realized the job was gone, about the slam of my apartment door, about the silence afterward. It wasn't triumph I felt now. It wasn't revenge burning in my chest. It was something quieter. A shift. I realized I didn't need her approval anymore. I didn't need her to acknowledge the years I'd been silenced, or the times she'd taken credit for my work, or the wounds she left behind. I had given myself something far more powerful, permission to stop carrying her lies. A week later, I finally told Mom. We sat across from each other at her kitchen table, the faint smell of lavender soap clinging to her hands. She looked tired, lines deeper around her mouth, hair pulled back too tight. "I need you to know what happened," I said, voice steady. And I told her. Not every sharp detail, but enough. Enough for her to see that Emily's downfall wasn't a random cruelty, it was the weight of truth catching up to her. Mom didn't say much. Her eyes glistened, and for a moment, I thought she might cry. But then she just reached across the table, squeezing my hand with surprising strength. "You've always carried more than you should," she whispered. Her words cracked something inside me, not pain, but release. Life didn't turn perfect after that. Emily stayed angry. Family gatherings grew tense, conversations clipped and brittle. But for the first time, I walked into those rooms without shrinking. Without lowering my eyes. If Emily wanted to paint me as the villain, that was her canvas. But I was done living inside her story. Back at the lake, weeks later, I stood on the dock again. The air was crisp now, autumn rolling in, the trees at the shoreline already tinged with gold. I closed my eyes and let the wind brush against my face. For years, I'd been the sister who bent, who yielded, who took the blows so the family could keep its fragile peace. But standing there, I felt something stronger than peace. I felt free. There are moments in life that divide everything into before and after. Before, I was the sister who stayed quiet. The one who let lies slide because calling them out would cause trouble. The one who canceled plans, gave up sleep, bit her tongue. After, I was someone else. Not louder, not crueler, just unshackled. I used to think strength meant holding the family together at any cost. Now I understand it means knowing when to step back, when to let the cracks show, when to refuse to carry a weight that was never mine. Sometimes I replay the night Emily stormed out of my apartment. I remember the slam of the door, the echo ringing through the walls. For a while, that sound haunted me. It felt final, like a gavel declaring a verdict. But now, when I think of it, I hear something different. I hear freedom. It's like the sound of a chain snapping, or the moment a bird shakes off a cage door left open too long. Emily may never forgive me. She may keep spinning her stories online, clinging to a version of me that makes her feel safe. That's her choice. Mine is simpler. I choose to live in truth. I choose mornings where the quiet doesn't scare me, where I can sip my tea without checking for shadows. I choose nights at the lake, where the water reflects the sky and I finally see myself, clear and whole. Family betrayal leaves scars, yes. But scars are not chains. They are reminders of battles survived, of strength carved into skin. When I look at mine, I don't see loss anymore. I see proof that I walked through fire and came out standing. And if you asked me now what I'd do differently? Nothing. Because the life I reclaimed, the freedom to stand tall in my own story, is worth more than any sister's approval, any family's silence, any dream job she ever thought was hers. The truth set me free. And for the first time, I don't just believe it. I live it.